Hi, I'm Anna, and for my network learning project, I chose to learn more about how to use my camera and a lot of the different settings and features that the newer DSLR cameras have. This is an older model. It's the Canon Rebel T2i, but still for the purposes of kind of capturing my family and lifestyle kinds of portraits, it really is working just fine. And I have the kit lens on here, which is 18 millimeter to 55 millimeter. My basic learning goals were just to be able to know what I was looking at when I was in a manual or a creative mode, and to understand some of the terminology in photography in general, which I had no clue about. And I used YouTube videos to kind of just learn about the different knobs. I knew where auto was, and I knew how to turn the flash off, and that was pretty much it. I knew what some of the presettings were, like for portrait or close-ups, and I would use those sometimes, but mostly I just stayed in auto entirely. And over the last 3 weeks, I have been able to use YouTube, a blog that has a forum attached to it called Cambridge in Color, and a forum, Digital Photography Review, which has tons of members, tons of forums that you can kind of interact and talk about photography, look at people's photos. There's a lot of critiques going on with constructive criticism and things like that happening in those forums, which has been really, really helpful to my learning process. So after I learned a little bit, I kind of created smaller learning goals for myself, which were to learn about iOS, aperture, shutter speed, and a few things about using manual focus and controlling the autofocus in the camera more, as well as the white balance of the camera. So just to give you a quick overview, the shutter speed is how fast the lens is opening and closing to take the photo. The aperture is how wide it opens. And then the iOS is something that's kind of a hangover from when people were using film instead of digital sensors. And there were different kinds of film that people would use that were more or less sensitive to light. So a higher iOS number would give you a much more sensitive film to light, and that is still what's sort of going on. Just digitally, the light is either amplified or reduced depending on which iOS setting you choose. And now I just want to take you through a few examples of my learning. A recent shoot that I did with my kids while they were playing, and a couple of these images really demonstrate how I've been struggling to get the iOS, the aperture, and the shutter speed all working together the way I want them to. You can see here that I've moved a lot of these levels post editing here in order to get a decently lit shot, which this is the beauty of digital photography, is I can go and edit these things afterward to kind of create the light, to kind of force the lighting. And if the shot is clear, then that works. But a lot of these things could have been fixed if I had just made better choices about my settings on my camera. So you can see that I have an iOS of 400, which is a pretty normal setting. It's not a super, it means that we're not super sensitive to light. The f-stop here, the f-stops actually work backwards, which I forgot in this moment. So the larger the f-stop, the smaller the aperture is. So that's why part of the reason this shot was so dark initially is because the aperture didn't open very much, didn't let much light in. The other reason that it's dark is because I have an extremely high shutter speed, 1/160th of a second. And so the shutter was barely open. to get the image, which is great in capturing movement, but is not great for getting light when you're in a dark situation. So you can see as I'm playing around here, I realize it's dark, and a few shots later, I was able to kind of rectify the situation to keep my high shutter speed, but I bring the f-stop down, and I actually upped the IOS so that the sensitivity to light would be increased. Thanks for watching. Those are just a few of the things that I've been learning, and I'm excited to continue on in this adventure of learning photography.